In this episode, we're going back to Portola to hear more about the WP-165 restoration.
Plus, there's the STRAUSBURG Railroad, a Schnabel Car, and Railfan Dan.
This is Railroad Showcase. Now we're going to be going into part 2 of our interview with Roger Stabler and Chris Allen about the restoration work on Western Pacific 060 number 165. So now, lately, all of the attention has gone to the big boy.
Obviously.
And rightfully so. They did a fantastic job, and it's a magnificent machine. But we have to remember that
it's not the only engine.
It's not the only engine out there, and an 060 mostly has the same parts as a big boy. There's just not quite as many of them. and guys working diligently in a small shop are sweating just as hard as the guys that are working in big modern shops as well. So hats off to these guys. Let's hear what Roger and Chris have to say.
We have a crew that maintains the diesel equipment here. And a couple of those people, one of them is a machinist, and so he is doing a stable for me right now on the engine. But his normal priority is to take care of the diesel fleet. They have, one of the engines out here has a radiator that got into a freeze. That's unfortunate. Last year we had an unexpected snowfall and it got caught. Forgot it, just one of those things happened and we blew a radiator. So when he gets that radiator out, he brings it in here on the shop floor. The steam guy here is going to sit down with his torches and silver solder, and we're going to fix his radiator for him and put it back in. So it's a cooperative thing. At first when we came in here, there was a very much us, them, those steam guys, these steam guys, those diesel guys. Oh, they're dirtying our shop. They're doing this. And as I've reminded them, I'm on the board of directors here now, remind people, this is the Western Pacific Railroad Museum. There's no us, them. We're all the same crew. Its engine doesn't belong to the steam department. It belongs to the Western Pacific Railroad Museum.
Power reverser was rebuilt, and it's on the engine. The quadrant's not in here yet, but we will get that done. And the throttle will come. Once we get the throttle in, then we'll bring the throttle rod over and we'll begin to put all this back together. So we have injectors to mount on the locomotive yet. Finish up the cab work. We hope to have the boiler buttoned up at the tail end of August, ready for its first. We'll do a boiler wash, then we'll fill our boiler with water and check our tube work and all of our work for leaks with no pressure, and we'll make a judgment whether we want to deal with it or take it to the hydro. If it's dripping, whether it's a little more than drips. Then we'll drain it down, let it sit for the winter probably, and then come back in the spring and get ready for the FRA inspection and our hydros to get ready to go. So our machine shop over here to the right has been very busy with this engine, duplicating things that we want. So we can make it here. We have the machinery here. Chris Allen donated a mill. The UP donated a lathe. Or the SP actually, I believe that lathe came here before the merger, but it came out of the SP shop at Roseville. And Chris also donated a smaller lathe for us to use, and I've donated other shop tools to make this a usable, productive shop. So for instance, in the tender, it would be real easy in the tender frame, because you'll never see it, that all the work we could have done down there would have been bolted. We could have just bolted it up. But no, we brought a rivet heater in here, and we made up our assembly line and riveted everything back into that tender just like they did it in 1919. So that's our goal, is to keep this thing. We had the boards for the cab floors, the boards for the tender frame, and the future boards for here were done on the Amador by the sawmill at Plymouth on their steam sawmill, cut rough dimension just like it would have been back in the day. I want this engine to look like it did when it come out of the shops. We need a firing handle for our firing quadrant. Now I'm probably going to make something up in the meantime, but we don't have the quadrant and we don't have the handle. Those were missing in this engine when we got it. So we still have to make a new manifold for the fireman side. We do have the old one, but we don't trust the material it was made out of. So, especially that it's sat this long, so we'll probably make a new manifold. We have a hydrostatic lubricator, but it's missing a couple of components, and if it comes down to it, we'll make them. But I'm still hunting for some of that. We had a lubricator here and somebody walked off with it, so it's just one of those unfortunate things, you know. So it's primarily going to be special events, and probably once a month at the most to start out with. It will be offered in the RAL program, but it will only be offered in the RAL program in days that it's scheduled to already be running. So if we're going to say Mother's Day, we're going to fire the engine up and we're going to run this engine Mother's Day, we'll probably allow about 2 RAL spots on those days, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And it'll be a run only, no firing. We're not going to trust this thing to somebody that we don't know.
You just can't show up and run the thing. It takes a whole week, one weekend to prep, one weekend to run, and another weekend to break things down, wash it out. So it's not like a diesel where you can just come in and push the button and it takes it.
So, and I do have a day job.
It's very labor intensive.
And I have a day job. Yeah, so.
I have a house to build.
He has a house to build, yeah.
Well, as you can see, the dry pipe, all the studs that went into the dry pipe were extremely corroded, so they've all been replaced. This hole here is where the snifter valve goes, and we have one, we're missing one, so we're going to manufacture a snifter here. It won't look quite original, but it'll function like the original. And to replace that one. We did replace the air tanks. We got rid of the riveted tanks and went to welded tanks. So that these are pre-drilled, we never have to hydro them, we don't have to worry about them. They meet all those standards. The running gear on this engine, this is what I said, was actually fairly tight for an engine that ran its lifespan. We do have everything, even though it's not on the engine right now. The brake rigging is probably the most wore out thing, so we will be doing a lot of pen work on the brake rigging once we get to these holes. Will have to be restored and made round again, and then we'll drive new pressing pins in and hang everything back under it. So that was probably a surprise how wore out that was. I hadn't seen brake rigging that worn out. So we have a blowdown valve here to go on yet. That was going to go this week, but we had a little issue with some piping, so that'll wait to get some parts ordered for it and then we'll get it back on. We're looking at the 13 stay bolts that were changed out on the bottom of the firebox because we have a patch that we put in on the inside. So we had to cut those out to get the sheet out, and then we put those back. The marks you see on the side of the boiler, those are the metric ultrasound marks that told us what the shell thickness was on the boiler for our Form 4 work, which is all done. Our Form 4 is done and has already been submitted to the FRA. So we have some of the appliances up on the engine have been reinstalled, and we're continuing to bring more of them over as when we have the crew here. This was our steam blitz weekend, so Thursday, Friday I had a pretty good sized crew in here working, and because of the dinner tonight it's kind of slowed down in here. We don't want to stir everything up while the dinner's going. So we put 24 new radial stays in the boiler. That work was completed yesterday. Crown stays have all been put back in and are done. So like I said, we're getting very close to the time to button it up and make it cook. I believe the whistle was donated by, I think that came from Norm Holmes, and I think that was off the 166 is what I was told. So it is a WP whistle. So
the Western Pacific, more than any other railroad on the West, was more like a family atmosphere.
Yeah.
Whereas the Southern Pacific was more of a corporate atmosphere, but they're trying to basically carry that on.
So it's been a cultural shift here, but it's starting to take effect. That us, them is just really starting to disappear.
The Strasburg Railroad, according to some sources, is the oldest continuously operating stretch of railroad in the Western Hemisphere. This video is by the Ethan Trains Productions channel on YouTube. He was fortunate enough to have visited the railroad on a picture-perfect day. His choice of angles and framing did an excellent job of capturing the look and the feel of this line.
Eight cars, eight.
Our next favorite find is a YouTube channel called Railfan Dan. Based out of Oregon, Dan has some awesome footage of trains of all sorts on the West Coast. We liked these two videos of Dan's especially, with his good use of his drone to get some spectacular shots of the lines and capturing the beauty of the surrounding landscapes.
So there's not a lot of ways that rail is intentionally submerged, but in the world of Lionel, I guess anything is possible. This railroad takes you to Atlantis. This cool video was shot by the 5 Mad Movie Makers channel on YouTube. Not only does it take you through a fun little tour of the yard, it goes all the way out to the beach and, well, you see what happens next. Go check out their channel and see some of the other interesting videos that they've created.
This is a Schnabel Car. Now, I've seen pictures of these guys, but I didn't know the name or really any details about them. So, obviously, they're used for hauling the biggest of the big. I think there's only 86 on the entire planet right now, depending on which sources you look at. This one being the biggest in the world, weighing 400 tons. Your standard box car weighs in at around 30 to 40 tons. This car is used mainly to carry nuclear reactor parts, sporting 36 axles, 18 trucks with 9 on each side, and can carry loads of up to 1,000 tons. To put that into perspective, the big boy, engine and tender combined, come in at over 1 million pounds. This car could take the weight of almost 2 of them.
Two big boys. This car...
2 big boys.
The weight of 2 big boys. That is amazing.
For our last favorite find, we have kind of a cute video. I guess even elephants have places to be, and this one didn't want to wait for the gates to go up. I'm just really glad a train wasn't there.
All right, that's it for this week. We know we weren't able to give you guys any news because when we could have been gathering news, we were actually over in Utah trying to get footage for upcoming episodes. But we sure hope you enjoyed this episode.
Thank you guys for watching.
Keep your hand on the throttle and your eye on the rail.